All right, we're here tonight. Tony Harrington here from Your Property Investing, and tonight I've got a special guest with us. It's commercial property expert Guy Naselli from NSL Property Group. Hey Guy, welcome aboard.
G'day Tony, thanks for having me aboard.
That's good, mate. Nice to have you on here.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, mate, I do get quite a lot of people inquiring about commercial property. I don't pretend to be an expert in that space, but you've had over 20 years in that game. So tonight we just want to give a bit of an overview as to how commercial works, and so let's kick it off. Why would people get started in commercial?
Yeah, good question, Tony. The reality is that, and I've come from a residential background, residential is great, but it's probably subject to some of the ebbs and flows of the market. As you can see, reading in the media at the moment, the residential market's probably a little bit off the boil, whereas the commercial sector remains pretty steady right through. So there's some asset classes that perform better than others, but they refer to, and you don't have to worry about anything else other than collecting the net rent, which is really good.
So mate, tell me, if I was going to invest in commercial, what's the main difference between commercial and residential?
Yeah, so fundamentally, what we talk about commercial as being a net rent. So meaning that the rent that you collect is net and it's clear in your pocket. On top of that, the tenant pays the outgoings. So things like council rates, water rates, insurance, land tax, they are all paid by the tenant on top of the rent. Fundamentally, in a residential investment, you as the landlord pay those as part of the servicing the property. So fundamentally, it's a very different shift in terms of what you're collecting is rent. So certainly, as a tenant, they pay a lot of the outgoings, which is good.
So are you able to explain to us one thing that I often wondered about was how do the leasing rates or the commercial rental returns, how do they sort of play out in a commercial property transaction as opposed to, like, if I've got a standard rental, I know I'm getting $2,200 a week or a month, sorry, if I've got a res, but how does it sort of specifically play out for commercial?
Yeah, same sort of thing. The rental is generally paid on a monthly basis. The yield can often be a lot better. So, often at the moment, for some asset classes, it's sitting at about 5%. So you're getting a clear 5% plus outgoings on top of what your investments were. Some asset classes are different to that, but that seems to be the norm at the moment.
Yeah, okay, cool. So today's market, look, I know we've been through COVID and there's been a lot of lockdowns in Melbourne, so I noticed there's a lot of commercial property I see sitting around. There's a lot of lease signs up, especially with retail shops.
Yeah.
What's your take on the commercial market now? Is there a sort of area that you specialise in, or are you sort of a bit across the board?
Yeah, so NSL Property Group is a bespoke commercial agency. So we do advocacy, we do transactions, which is your sales and leasing. And we offer an advisory role for some key clients where we actually sit down with them and manage their portfolios from where to go. But in terms of the asset classes, look, we do, just by way of background, my background's always been in industrial and warehousing, and that's what I know really well. Some are performing better than others. So retail at the moment is probably, it's got its own headwinds, as does offices. I mean, obviously on the back of COVID, one of the things that COVID did teach us was the ability to work from home. So certainly some of that CBD office market is feeling the pinch, but really the pin-up boy of commercial at the moment is industrial and warehouses, as it's flying, to say the least.
Yeah, I've got to say that I noticed in my travels, look, I live even here in Williamstown, there's a major development just happening up on Corroy Creek Road on Maddox Road. I think they're building about 130 warehouses inside that actual development. Then there's more going on in Altona North, and bloody everywhere else you look in the western suburbs. So, have you got a specific area that you've got in mind, or sort of, what should an investor look for if they're thinking about a commercial property?
Yeah, so the saying in residential investing is location. The same applies in commercial. So I'm a big believer that, and purely on supply and demand, the further out you go, certainly you're getting some more affordable properties, but when they do become vacant for lease, then certainly you've got a lot more competing stocks. So my suggestions to investors, budding investors in commercial, is always around the city fringe is often a great return. The reality is that the CBD isn't going to relocate anytime soon. So anything 2 to 5 kilometres out of the CBD is a really good, safe investment. The other thing it does also in these suburbs, it provides an element of flexibility. So, for example, things like future uplift in price, you're likely to find it. But also, one day if that tenant does vacate, your ability to find another tenant is certainly a lot stronger as opposed to being further out.
So are you sort of suggesting that if you stay inside a certain kilometre radius from the CBD, better opportunities in regard to capital growth and also rental returns as well, and having your leases being uptaken? Because one of the things that I always thought about when I looked at commercial over the years in my journey was that, what do I do if I sit there and the place is vacant for a couple of years?
Yeah, certainly, and that's always a real risk, and that's just the reality of investing in any market. But one of the things I will say is that once you get a good tenant, they usually become what we call sticky. Especially if they're investing money into the asset, they've built up a business. Remember, no tenant likes to pick up and relocate, especially if they're thriving. So you'll find that anything within the city fringe tends to make them want to stay, unless there's obviously unforeseeable circumstances where they're probably struggling or the business has changed tack. But certainly, anything 2 to 10 k's out of the CBD, I think is pretty sound.
Yeah, and so you're predominantly sort of talking in that space, commercial warehouse type properties where, say, it might be a small business goes in and they've got a mezzanine floor with an office and stuff and storage space and place to run their business from. Is that what you propose?
Yeah, absolutely. They're really flying at the moment. We're involved in a couple of projects in the inner north. We're doing some work in the inner west here of Melbourne. Even the southeast is just flying. So you're right. So these warehouses traditionally have warehousing or loading capabilities, so with a roller door, and then they've got a standalone office either on the ground floor or upstairs. So they really are a flexible offering, and with people now investing in e-commerce, warehousing and distribution, they're pretty popular.
Yeah. So if somebody was to look at investing into a commercial property, I believe self-managed super funds are pretty popular. Do you know a lot about the advantages of buying this type of property inside a self-managed super fund?
Yeah, certainly a lot of accountants, I'm certainly no accountant or financial advisor, but purely on a price point, I mean, there is no other asset class that you can buy for $650,000 that gives you a 4 to 5% return. So that's why self-managed super funds are really popular, and there's some significant savings, especially from a depreciation point of view. So they certainly tick a lot of boxes for the financial advisors and lending institutions.
And how does the finance work on a commercial deal? Because I believe it's a bit different to residential.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So typically, to enter into a commercial investment, you need to outlay a deposit, no different to residential, so typically 10%. The LVR, the loan ratios are sometimes higher, so it's a little bit more challenging to get into, but we're finding more and more residential investors, if they do have the capabilities, are moving their capital towards a commercial investment. So I think at the moment, some of the larger institutions are sort of hovering at around 65% LVR, but that also depends on each individual's ability to repay and service a loan. But I don't know how that compares with residential, but certainly it can be a little bit more challenging, but once you're in there, then they're a pretty sound investment.
Yeah, and what about interest rates? Are interest rates generally higher for a commercial loan?
They are, yeah, because the banks perceive that element of risk, especially if they're remaining vacant. But again, a lot of the major banks are now coming to the party because they see them as a sound investment, and the ability to rent them out, if they're priced correctly, that is a lot sooner than it used to be.
Yeah. So if somebody was to look at purchasing something along the lines of a commercial guy, are you able to maybe help people build a plan or build a strategy, break down the numbers, understand the borrowing, the affordability level, help people with the leasing side of it, and sort of take away that little bit of fear of, I'm not quite sure how all this works? Is that sort of what you do?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the advisory and transactional piece. So we often see clients that say, "Look, Guy, I've got $1 million, $500,000 to spend. What can I do with it?" So in that instance, we'll sit down with them. If they come from a lender or a lending institution, great. If they haven't, then we can certainly refer them to some that will be able to provide some advice. And then it's about horses for courses. Certainly, we're non-affiliated with any particular bank, but certainly we can go out there and help them find a great return. One of the things we do offer is once we've identified a property, we can refer it to a number of solicitors that they can chat to get the contracts reviewed, and if they tick the box, then certainly help them transact. So that's certainly something we can help with.
Yeah. So what would the standard lease be? 5 by 5 by 5 or 3 by 3 by 3?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the smaller businesses like smaller lease terms, maybe 2 or 3 years with a further term. And then at the end of that further term, you as the landlord get the option of a market review. And that's where we can see some of those rentals really jump, especially if the market's doing what it's doing at the moment. We've seen some tenants who've been on some pretty good wickets. At market review, the rent can jump up significantly. So there's some pretty good gain to have.
Well, look, I might just let the listeners know at the moment, if you're sitting with us and you're on the Zoom, there's a little chat button at the bottom of your screen. If you have any queries or any questions, you can type a question into the chat box for us, or if you want to jump online and ask us a question, just put your hand up and I'll unmute you and you can ask us any questions direct.
Yes, spot on.
No questions, all good. Mate, what would you like to cover? What do you think the key things are that people need to learn or people need to know about?
Yeah, look, the fundamentals are important. Certainly identifying an asset class that you particularly like. And the reason I say that is that it's important to have flexibility. So you might want to buy a warehouse purely for the means of occupying or investing. And then looking at what are the future options there. Can we release it if it becomes vacant? So that's certainly important. Always batting within your means. I mean, that refers to the finances. Certainly not over leveraging. I mean, I often get a lot of investors say, "Look, I'm good for $1 million." I say to them, well, what about if we look at, instead of parting with one bigger asset at $1 million, why don't we look at 2 or 3, two assets at $500,000 each and diversifying your risk profile there, because that way, if one becomes vacant, you've still got an income coming through. So that's important. And then sitting down with a prospective purchaser and saying, look, what's your long-term plan? Are you looking to buy it with a view of flipping it in a couple of years? Because if that's the case, then certainly buying something with maybe a mixed-use zoning or part of a strata may not be as appealing. Maybe something standalone might be the way to go. So it's really horses for courses would be my early feedback. Absolutely.
Yeah. Where do you see the market heading in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, look, I think on the back of COVID, certainly we're seeing the Melbourne market, which is where I play a lot of in terms of my investing and my sales, is still pretty strong. Encouragingly, the borders are opening up, so some of that pent-up demand is now being fulfilled. And then, look, one of the things that, again, we learned from COVID is the ability to be self-sufficient. So that's why owning a commercial property makes it a long-term proposition. We used to see a lot of that offshore capital going overseas, but we've become resilient and a little bit smarter now as a community. So that manufacturing, the distribution, the e-commerce, on the back of some amazing businesses growing, has really sustained and grown from strength to strength over the last few years.
So with the commercial real estate transaction, I know that with my property investing clients with the residential, the first thing I do is I get them financially assessed by a finance broker, so we know exactly what they can or can't afford, what's their borrowing capacity. What's the first step for someone looking to buy commercial?
Yeah, same process, Tony. Certainly we recommend that they sit down with a financial planner or advisor to get a clear picture on what they can invest. And then on the back of that, we'll tailor a solution that suits their needs. They may have a particular flavour or want to one day have the option of operating out of an office, or want to own some retail in a suburban strip that they know and feel comfortable with. So it's about sitting down with them and working out their preference, and then going to the market. Now, whether that means I've got some stock ready to go, or partner up with another agent that we work closely with that may be able to service the brief for individual clients. So it's really sitting down and holding the prospective purchaser or investor's hand from start to finish.
Yeah, pretty much what we do in the res stuff anyway. What about commercial, say in areas like Geelong, that's absolutely booming as a growth area? Like, we've absolutely killed it down there with residential. Is that a pretty good market from a commercial perspective?
Yeah, Geelong was the what we call the sleeping giant of commercial. For many years, obviously, Melbourne looked after itself, and it's got a lot of track record. But again, people have rediscovered their suburbs. Not too different to people moving into Queensland. A lot of Melburnians have seen Geelong as their primary place of residence. So some of those surrounding precincts around there have just flourished, and standing on their own 2 feet from an investment point of view. It's pretty tightly held. There's not a lot of stock, but if you can find it, then you're locked into a pretty good winner.
Pretty tight market, because there's some pretty big employment precincts planned for down there, but there's also one out in the west I wanted to ask you about, and I think it was out on Mount Derrimut Road, and they're talking 25,000 jobs out there near Mount Atkinson.
Extraordinary. Yeah, some of these growths in these outlying precincts is phenomenal. And we've seen it reflected in the land rates. So you're right. I mean, you just have to drive out west every 2 years. It's a completely changing landscape. On the back of some terrific transport initiatives, obviously the Westgate Freeway, the East-West Link, and some of these connecting arterials, with that has brought some really good population growth. Another one that I do a lot here in Melbourne, and I'm part of the Fisherman's Bend Business Forum, is Port Melbourne. If you can, traditionally a sleeping giant, only 2 kilometres from the CBD, the Melbourne, Melbourne City Council and the Department of Planning over a period of almost 10 years have rezoned that area. So what was traditionally industrial is now becoming capital city zoning, and they're predicting 80,000 new residents over a 20, 30-year period. So again, that's going to go gangbusters.
Makes me think of North Melbourne.
Yes,
complete overhaul there as well of the zoning as well. It's absolutely monstrous what's going to happen in there.
Yeah, what you're referring to is that Arden Macaulay precinct. So they've redeveloped it. They've got a massive train station going in there. With that brings some good population and amenities, your shopping centres, your cafes, so all that childcare, health, it just flows on.
Yeah, and you got all the hospitals not far away either. And I went to a developer launch there recently. I don't know, we're here to talk commercial, but this is sort of mixed use. There's going to be about 8 towers go up on the one site, and they're all going to be interconnected at the top. It's all going to be New York style, and swimming pools and bars and all sorts of stuff. So I think, North Melbourne's an area that you're probably going to see a lot of change in. So are they the sort of areas that you look at? It's got a mix of commercial, residential, industrial. Is that the key?
It is, and then we come back to that point of flexibility that I was talking about. So you've got North Melbourne, Port Melbourne, and then you sort of wrap around to the inner North Brunswick, Coburg, Preston. Traditionally blue collar working suburbs that is just flying through the roof. And then you sort of then you head back over to the southeast, places like Altona North in the west, Sunshine. Massive growth opportunities there as well. So one areas to keep an eye on for sure.
Is it something you should look for? Is infrastructure something that you should look for when you're trying to decide, areas or locations? Like, for instance, there's a lot of new train lines and a lot of new freeways and stuff going to be built in Melbourne over the next 5 or 10 years. Is that something that people should consider?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm a big believer that as part of, when we talk about due diligence, is one of the things we do with our prospective purchases. But let's have a look at the demographics. What's the council proposing in and around amenities? Is there a local shopping centre that's likely to spring up? Because they're all the hidden gems of getting some real capital growth in commercial property. So, public transport. If you know that there's a new service station, a new train station popping up in the immediate precinct, well, what does that do? I mean, obviously that's going to bring more people to the area. So, again, there's some of the boxes that we like to tick as a prospective investor.
Yeah, we've got a lot of residential investors right now that where we're parking ourselves, there's over $2 billion worth of infrastructure coming in right behind us. Money's already there and funded, so we know what's going to happen. 950 million on a hospital.
Yeah, certainly, and they're the things that you can't put a price on really, but certainly adds to some major uplift.
Yeah. What about medical suites?
Yeah, look, they're a growing asset class that's gained momentum. One thing about medical suites and anything sort of allied health and wellbeing is that they're very bespoke. Sometimes they do take a little bit longer to find a tenant, but once you do, then they generally don't want to move, because you just have to look at any medical facilities. Most of those leases are 10 years because they have practitioners that are operating. And to get into one is, good luck if you can find it. So certainly it comes with an element of time and risk, but once you've locked one in, then they're as safe as housing.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about an area like Footscray, which has got a lot of industrial around that area, you've got the Footscray Hospital under construction right now. I think it's about a $1.5 billion project, and they're talking a couple of thousand health jobs once it's built. But then I would presume that around that precinct, you would see a bucket load of, specialists and, those health professionals that want to work and attach themselves to that type of project. Yeah,
that's a great analogy. So our office has transacted 3 properties in and around that Footscray precinct on the back of that brand new hospital. I think at last count there was something like 12 or 13 cranes coming out of the site. It's a massive project. But again, the spillover of that is that you want to get practitioners around there. We've had hospitality industry that wants to be around there. So you're right, it's something of that scale and nature brings other businesses with it. So
yeah. When you look at an area like that, I sort of reflect back when they redeveloped the Box Hill Hospital. I don't know, probably 20 years ago now. But then if you go over there now, you have a look what's there. It's just medical places all over the place, everywhere you look.
Yeah, you're spot on, and it just. They often say in commercial real estate, if you want to make money, follow the coffee cups. And there's plenty of coffee cups around those suburbs, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, now, with commercial real estate, this is something that's just popped into my head. For instance, if I bought a property, held it for 10 years, and when I went to on-sell it, is there capital gains involved, similar to resi?
Yeah, unfortunately, if there's a profit, there's capital gains. So there are some properties that were not subject to capital gains, and that was if you purchased, I think, prior to 1985. But since then, anything that makes a profit, the State Revenue Office and the government collects a bit of it on the way through.
What if I bought a commercial property and used it and rented it back out to myself, leased it back out to myself and run a business out of there? How does that sort of work?
I believe it does still attract a capital gains, especially if you're selling it. Because they deem it as a commercial use, because it comes back to what zoning it is. So the fact that you're running a business from there, I think, doesn't really matter. They still see it as an uplift in profit.
Yeah. So I presume when you're looking at doing this type of transaction, you'd want to get some pretty specific advice from a pretty good tax accountant as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're again, subject to. No financial advice on this podcast, on this chat, but certainly we recommend chat to your financial planners, accountants, even solicitors are a big part of the transaction that can steer in the right direction.
Yeah, look, I think if anyone's going to invest in any type of real estate at all, they should have that good team of people around them anyway, so that the people are working together, building a plan and building a strategy.
Yeah, spot on.
So, mate, anything else you want to cover with us tonight? Anything we haven't touched on yet that you think is pretty important for the listeners?
No, look, my only advice, I suppose, to the listeners out there is don't be scared. Traditionally, there's been a lot of myths and apprehension about investing in commercial, and certainly you probably need to jump through a couple more hurdles before you secure something. But we're getting an enormous amount of traditional residential investors that are moving across. So that certainly speaks volume. The banks have become more sophisticated in their lending. So, many years ago they used to make you, unless it was leased, they wouldn't be interested. But now they understand the appetite for investment and rental is there from an investment point of view. And the other thing is, driving around, you do see sometimes in some retail strips a lot of for lease boards that sit around. That's probably a reflection more of the landlord that's not being commercial rather than the asset class. So again, don't be alarmed. But we're as an agency always welcome to have a chat to any budding investors in this field. We've put together a book as well that helps people think about when they're buying, what are some of the things to strategically think about as an investor. And I think we spoke about it at the start, Tony, that people can access that via a link as well. So
yeah,
that would be my parting gift for sure.
Sure. There's a link in the chat box for everyone that's online with us at the moment. If you want to go into the chat box and just click that link, it'll get you direct and get a copy of Guy's latest book, Commercial Real Estate Strategic Selling. He's happy to give you a free copy of that as well. If anybody wants to have a talk to us, you got any questions or any queries, or you want to have a chat one-on-one, feel free to touch base with us, and happy to answer any questions you got. And if there are any questions out there at the moment, feel free to fire away. We've still got a few minutes here, guys, so let's see if we can get any questions.
Yeah, ask away.
I've got one for you.
How
do you work out vacancy rates? Because I can get some pretty substantial residential data on vacancy rates. So how does that work with commercial?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So one of the things, in Victoria, leases aren't necessarily registered. So we, certainly other than ringing valuers, a group of valuers, then it's really hard to get a snapshot. Look, a simple task that we often tell our prospective investors is get on Real Commercial, which is the leading website on one of the few real estate platforms, and just have a look at some of the assets that are on there for lease. You'll find that you can be really specific in terms of size. You might want to purchase something between 500 square metres to 1,000. So you do a search on realestate.com and it'll punch out the properties that are available. But again, take that with a pinch of salt, because many agents, unfortunately, leave properties up there for lease, even though they have been leased. So I'm a big believer, you just got to jump in the car sometimes, drive around an immediate precinct, and you'll quickly know what your competing stock is. That's probably the best way.
Yeah, you just touched on a key point there, and we haven't spoken about it. Is there a sweet spot for a certain particular square meterage size, industrial warehouse that's a real sweet spot that's like it's high demand, people want that type of product? Is there a certain specific product out there that people really want?
Look, it's across all asset classes. So the smaller the asset class, you're more likely to find a little bit more turnover in the rent. If you can afford more and you've got the capabilities to, then certainly anything over 1,000 to 2,000, that's when the tenants really start becoming sticky. So you'll see 5-year leases, 5 plus 5, so all that. So the bigger they are, the more that a tenant is less likely to move.
Well, that makes sense. If you've got a large business that's looking for a large square metre space, they're not going to go in there and fit it all out and get themselves set up and then walk out in 12 months or 2 years later, really, are they?
No, that's right. Because in many instances, they've spent an enormous amount in infrastructure. I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got a warehouse of 1,000, 2,000 square metres and you lease it to a printer, for example. Some of those printing presses and machinery and the power required is enormous. So the last thing that they want to do as a tenant is pick up and relocate. So that's what you call a good long-term tenant.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, look, we ran it out. It's been about 30 minutes, mate. I think I try to keep these to around the 30-minute mark. Look, if there's no other questions or anything for tonight, folks, thanks for dropping in. And Guy, thanks so much for giving us that insight into commercial. You've sort of enlightened me a bit. It's an area that I don't proclaim to be an expert in at all, but I've actually learned a fair bit tonight from you. So thanks so much for joining us, and we appreciate your time.
My pleasure. And as I said, feel free to reach out via the website, NSL Property Group. You can download the book, or shoot me a text, because I'm certainly happy to have a chat. And